Hello, BookTube. It's Wednesday, and that means Epic Comic Book Wednesday. That is a collaboration between myself and Michael K Vaughan, where we combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to examine the comic books on which we have wasted our youths. and It started out as a feature on Michael's channel about his Epic collections, Marvel's full-color paperback reprint line. And I horn my way in, as I am wont to do on BookTube. Nobody invites me. I have to horn my way in. I'm an outcast, a pariah. And because I horned my way in, of course, it seemed only right that Michael should do the picking on what we discuss week by week. We quickly branched out from the Epic collections. But even so, him doing the picking means that sometimes you get the bear. Sometimes he picks something. Sometimes he picks something that's really, really good, that I like. Other times he picks things that he likes that are mistaken. It's when his taste deviates, well, nothing can be done about that. And unfortunately today, the spotlight is on one of those deviations, one of his favorite characters, one of everybody's favorite DC characters, The Flash. And the story starts out in World War II. The story starts out in the 1940s when there was a character called The Flash who gains miraculous super speed. His name was Jay Garrick. He was interesting as a character, pretty much the most interesting aspect of his character at the time that I kept wondering about. He had a metal helmet that had Mercury wings, sort of a fashion statement. And I, like everyone else, wondered, well, how does it stay on when he's running? It's the first thing that would happen, is that it would blow off. And in his video, I'll leave a link to Michael K. Vaughan's video down below. In his video, Michael makes a very true statement. One of the only things in his video that I agreed with at all, which was that by now it should be easily possible to read a big deluxe omnibus edition of the 1940s adventures of Jay Garrick Flash. And it isn't possible to do that because DC Comics is so wayward in their reprint culture that there is no volume like that, let alone many volumes like that. There isn't a volume like that for most of the treasures that they were putting out in the 1940s and early 1950s. And like many superheroes, when the comic book, ship them out to the troops fad of superheroes sort of faded in the late 1940s, the Flash went away. He went bye-bye. And so did a lot of other heroes. And then an idea was floated at DC Comics to bring these heroes back. The mainstays had stuck around. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, and over at Fawcett, Superboy, one of the best-selling comic books they had. Those stuck around. They stuck right through. Sales were good enough. But a lot of the others went bye-bye and fell into desuetude. And that led to the idea that we should reinvent them for the modern era. And the first one to get that reinvention was The Flash. No longer Jay Garrick. Instead, a police scientist named Barry Allen, who's fiddling around his lab one day. When lightning strikes a wall of chemicals, they bathe him, and he gets incredible super speed. And decides to wear a skin-tight red leotard. And fight crime as The Flash. In that book, in a disastrous nod to meta-reality, we're even told that he liked to read comic books. The comic book adventures of Jay Garrick's Flash. That's where he gets the inspiration. And then he becomes a super speed hero in the present day, in the late 50s and early 1960s. And he's done well for DC. This is where you get issues like this. Only, what kind of a dork would buy and personally number an issue like this from, when was this? 1970. I can tell you part of the reason why a young dork might buy an issue of this when it was 15 cents back when that was real money, and maybe write a letter to the editor about how, I'm enjoying this fairly well, but I miss Jay Garrick's hat. But I can tell you one of the reasons why that young loser would buy an issue like this, and that's that it has Gil Kane artwork. Beautiful, Gil Kane artwork. Gil Kane is a great artist. He's drawn almost every major comic book character that's ever existed. And he had a long run doing a lot of covers, great covers like this one, and interiors for The Flash. He illustrates 2 stories in this issue of The Flash, neither one of which makes a whole lot of sense. In one of them, The Flash dies, and the Justice League is carrying his coffin. It's a convoluted story, and it ends up being, it ties into the cover, Flash dead, but there he is, and he's not dead. It all ties into that. There you have the Justice League bearing his coffin to its grave. There you have his girlfriend, Iris Allen, standing there watching them do that. There's no one else in the graveyard, and she's saying, "No one will ever know I am Flash's widow." I wonder how many people are going to need a roadmap when they see this. They're probably going to be able to guess. That's good. But these issues, these old Flash issues, had Gil Kane artwork, but not always. Quite a bit of the art was done by Carmine Infantino, an artist named Carmine Infantino, who is synonymous with the Flash, even though he is largely talentless. And you get volumes like this. The Silver Age Flash, DC Comics put out volumes like this, a large number of them, where you get Flash adventures. And when you can get an inker to sort of sit on Carmine Infantino, whether it's Jim Mooney or anybody else, they can get good work out of them. But it's unimaginative work. Look at that page. It's fairly unimaginative work, which coincides with the character, who is unimaginative. The Flash is incredibly boring. He is a member of a large roster of superhero characters that I don't like because their superpower is their character. They are one note. I can't stand that in a superhero. It drives me nuts. I've never understood why the Flash has fans, why the Atom has fans. The modern Atom, the Silver Age Atom, can shrink himself small. That's his power. That's also his personality. Tell me one thing from the 1950s or early 60s. Tell me one thing you know about Ray Palmer, his secret identity, that isn't also true for Barry Allen, the Flash's secret identity. Ridiculous. They are just one note. I could extend, for a long time, I could have extended the same criticism from Marvel Comics with characters like the Hulk. He hulks out. Or Iron Man. He wears a suit of armor. It's only been very recently, and largely thanks to Robert Downey Jr., that Marvel has given Tony Stark a personality. They tried it decades before that by making him an alcoholic, but not anywhere except in one issue, so what difference does it make? It's when it comes to characters like Tony Stark, I find myself nodding vigorously with Captain America in the Avengers movie. Man in a suit of armor, take that away, what are you? Now, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., gives a great comeback to that in that movie, but Marvel has had a tendency to, either company, Marvel or DC, the two major superhero companies, have a tendency to foist upon you characters who are their superpowers. And although I can't lay the Silver Age reinvention of the Flash at Stan Lee's door, I can't make it his fault, I can still use him as an emblem of what's wrong here, because of the most famous comic book utterance that exists. Since, look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. It's not a comic book utterance. That's a radio show utterance. The most famous thing to come out of a comic book, by far, is with great power comes great responsibility. And if you think about that for a minute, you'll see my problem with it, which is that it's pretty much laying out a blueprint that says it's only after you get your superpowers that you'll have a personality or a code of ethics. The phrase should much more accurately be, with great responsibility comes great power. What I want is, what I like in my superheroes is a superhero who is interesting regardless of their superpowers, who is not identical to their superpowers. The most famous superhero of them all, Superman, is Superman because of the moral raising that he had from the Kents in Smallville. His powers don't make him Superman at all. Wonder Woman is a princess and an ambassador. Her powers don't make her Wonder Woman. Another perfect example, if you want to use the trinity of DC Comics, is Batman, who has no superpowers. He is entirely a self-creation. He is what he is his character. I don't think there's any coincidence that he's one of the most popular superheroes that's ever existed, because he is his character. And when Marvel has done that with, for instance, Thor or Spider-Man, the results have been embraced. When that's what I like. I like a character who isn't just their superpower, and who isn't made into a hero because of their superpower. Hal Jordan, the Silver Age Green Lantern. Why is he a Green Lantern? Okay, so a dying alien gives him a superpowered ring, but why? Until that moment, he doesn't care about fighting crime. He's a hot dog test pilot. Until the moment when that rack of chemicals sprays all over Barry Allen, he is a plodding police scientist, forgetful, late, certainly not athletic. He doesn't lift weights. He doesn't practice judo. He doesn't go running at all. When that accident happens, suddenly he has superpowers, and all of the stuff that you know from then, all of the professional stuff with the suit on, but also all the personal stuff happens because of that. Well, that's boring. that's boring. If the Hulk isn't interesting without hulking out, then he's not interesting. If Ray Palmer is not interesting when he isn't shrinking to the size of a marble, then he's not interesting. Is my take on these things. That is my take. Marvel and DC. In this case, I'm not just bashing on Marvel. The Flash is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Barry Allen has no interest. He doesn't know how to run. He's not in any kind of shape. And the tag is often tossed out that he's a police scientist in later issues, especially when they're being written here by Gardner Fox. That thin little rubric of police scientist suddenly makes him, Einstein in red tights. Ridiculous. A police scientist, that's gun forensics and fingerprints. That's about all that Barry Allen would know. It's a very thin distinction, especially back in the late 1950s. Not a scientific genius by any method. And he doesn't act scientific anyway, even when he's called that. He doesn't act it in his civilian life, or he's a non-entity, is what I'm saying. And because Barry Allen is not a runner, because he's not in any kind of good physical shape that we ever see until he gets miraculously transformed, it's the polar opposite of Batman. Instead, it's, well, okay, if you didn't have this power floating you along, you wouldn't be nothing. It's not like it's enhancing anything that you once were. And don't come back with the example of Superman, okay? Superman has his powers by accident. He would have been a hero anyway, because of the way he was raised by the Kents. It's Superman's moral rectitude that makes him a hero. It's Batman's relentless sense of vengeance and justice that makes him a hero. It's Wonder Woman's sense of equality and peace that makes her a hero. All the stuff around them accentuates that. Nothing like that happens with the Flash. Who is Barry Allen? I have no idea who Barry Allen is. None whatsoever. But he was popular. He's a one-note character, and one-note characters usually are popular. They can do the one thing. So can you stop them from doing the one thing, or how are they going to figure out how to do the one thing? He can run really fast. So he had adventure after adventure after adventure. He racked up a whole bunch of villains, of recurring supervillains, bewilderingly. Flash bro fans tend to say that he has the greatest rogues gallery of any superhero in the world. I think Michael said something like that in his own video, with the thumbnail of which has $3,000 worth of 200-pound hardcover omnibus editions of The Flash. It's often said that The Flash has the greatest rogues gallery of any superhero. That always absolutely mystifies me. It just mystifies me. It's not like you even have to go to Marvel. It's not like you have to go to Spider-Man. You only have to look at Batman to see that isn't true. But anyway, the Flash had a bunch of adventures, and in one of those adventures, inevitably, he takes on a teen sidekick, Wally West. He gets into an accident, gets Flash powers just like the Flash, puts on at first a duplicate costume and then a color-swapped costume of his own, and becomes the Flash's sidekick, Kid Flash. And then branches out and becomes a big fan favorite by being a founding roster member of the Teen Titans, a team book for DC that did really well. Did really well originally, then it stopped for a while, then it got a relaunch in the 80s and did even better. Stratospheric sales when the new Teen Titans was relaunched. I'm sure that Michael K. Vaughan and I will be getting to the new Teen Titans. Barry Allen, it continues on as the Flash until DC Comics decided to have a big event, a mega event, a 12-issue event. It's this thing. It's Crisis on Infinite Earths, which Michael K. Vaughan and I will definitely get around to talking about. It's a big existential crisis in which you can kind of make it out here. You have speedsters. There's Johnny Quick. There's the Jay Garrick Flash with his hat. There's Max Mercury. And right there, front and center, you have Barry Allen's The Flash, and he looks like he's in distress. And the reason he looks like he's in distress is because he dies in this 12-issue miniseries. Supergirl dies, and the Wonder Woman of an alternate Earth dies, but also Barry Allen's Flash dies in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And when we're picking up the pieces at the end of Crisis, let me get you the exact panel, because I actually cheered when I got to it. We will be getting to this. Michael and I will be getting to this. There's a sequence here. George Perez artwork there. That is Wally West. He discovers the Flash's body his costume in the remains in the rubble of the supervillain's lair, and here he's talking with his doctor at the end, issue number 12 of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he says, "You're sure of those results, Jay?" The Jay is Jay Garrick, the original Flash. "I've triple-checked them, Wally. It's true. When you were struck by the anti-monitor, your body chemistry was changed. You're no longer dying each time you use your super speed. The disease is in remission. And the fastest I can run now is the speed of sound. That's great, Jay. Really great. Which makes what I have to say more meaningful. Barry died saving us. I want the Flash, his Flash, remembered. I began my super speed career wearing his costume. I only changed to establish my own identity. I don't need that anymore. Jay, I am no longer Kid Flash. From this day forth, the Flash lives again." And the reason I was cheering is because that sets a limit on the character. That says, all right, well, you're super fast. You're about what Jay Garrick's Flash was. You can run so fast in normal circumstances, the speed of sound, that you can effectively dodge bullets, catch bullets. They seem to disappear. Plenty fast enough to be a super fast character. But once later creators got their hands on the Wally West Flash, that stopped being true. And it stopped being true in a big way in this collection. These issues. That is the Wally West Flash. That is not Barry Allen. And it's in these issues that was introduced the concept of the Speed Force. An interdimensional, supernatural, theocratic, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly thing where speedsters, flashes of one kind or another, can tap into this source that allows them to travel at instantaneous, ridiculous speeds. They're no longer running at the speed of sound. They're not even running at the speed of light. They can do anything. Even when these came out, is this thing going to tell me when these issues came out? It was Mark Waid that originally came up with this abomination. Yeah, in the 1990s. Even when this originally came out, I thought, oh, come on. There is no reason to make the Flash into a god. He did well in his own book. He had plenty of adventures in his own book. Why not just have him be a super fast character? But no, we suddenly have to have the Speed Force, which he's connected to, or sometimes it seems like it's in possession of him, and I guess speedsters can go and live in it and maybe set up an Etsy shop. And the obvious motive here was to make the Flash the fastest character in the DC lineup. Now that's ridiculous. The fastest characters in the DC lineup are Superman and Wonder Woman, not the Flash. not a chemically irradiated police scientist. Superman and Wonder Woman are the fastest characters in DC Comics, not the Flash, but not after you introduce the Speed Force. No, then all of a sudden, he's got this mystical aura to it. He's not even in our reality anymore. Is he even running? Who knows? Does he need to run? Can he activate the Speed Force with just his mind? I won't deny that it's led to some very dramatic Flash storylines. There have been any number of these things. Flash does, as a DC character, does really, really well in reprint culture. I think Michael K. Vaughan mentioned that himself in his video, that unlike a lot of its other characters, DC has done a lot of reprinting of the Flash. They haven't done the Golden Age Flash. But they've done a lot of other things. There's a classic Brian Bolland cover. Look at that. And as these adventures go on, keep in mind this is all Wally West. Barry Allen's Flash, no. This is all Wally West. As he goes on, they go even further. The writers go even further with this character, mainly a writer called Jeff Johns. They go even further. Instead of just having the Flash connected with the Speed Force, instead of only doing that, that's bad enough, but instead of only doing that, they also, for a period, I don't know if it's still true with Flash, the Flash is so boring to read. I would never buy a comic with this character as the only star. But obviously, I would never buy anything. This character is so lame. Who would have a bunch of graphic novels about him? Who would have bought his comics back in the 1970s? But in addition to the Speed Force, at one point or another, various writers, including this Jeff Johns character, decided to give the Flash the ability to control motion. So not just to be super fast, but also to impart speed to other people and other objects, or to remove it. At one point in one of these issues, the Flash is being chased by Superman, long story, and he thinks to himself, well, I could just remove all of his ability to move. I could just take it away from him, which makes the Flash basically God. And I don't know why quite DC writers have needed to do that. Certainly it's been embraced by bro fans of the Flash who think he's just the coolest thing. But I don't know why it was necessary to do. Is it all just Superman envy? The fastest man alive. Well, the fastest human alive. But Superman is faster, obviously, because Superman is better at everything than everybody. That's why he's Superman. but that just kept going and going and going. And this character became enormously popular. The first live-action TV superhero show in 20 years was The Flash from the 1980s. Then there was, of course, the Flash from the WB with Grant Gustin as the star. I thought that was absolutely hilarious when he was cast. He is a six-pack a day tobacco addict. He can't walk up a flight of stairs, much less run. And I'm not saying that, of course, you don't need super speed to play the Flash, but it isn't even slightly convincing. I remember when that casting decision was made thinking, oh, come on. He couldn't run around the block. He would literally die if you asked him to run around the block even once. I thought it can't get any more hypocritical than that. And then DC, Warner Brothers, the DC cinematic universe, cast Ezra Miller as the Flash, who not only he's an even bigger tobacco addict than Grant Gustin, he literally cannot live a minute without smoking. He couldn't run to save his life. But in addition to that, he has that in common with Grant Gustin. But in addition to that, unlike Grant Gustin, he's much worse. He doesn't even know what it looks like to run. He does all this weird stuff when you see the Flash in his various guest stars. And the character has gone on to be a bit cursed, thanks to Ezra Miller's multi-state, year-long crime spree that has thrown the fate of the multi-million-dollar Flash solo movie into grave doubt. Especially if Ezra Miller ends up convicted and doing time for serious crimes like robbery or pedophilia or illegal arms possession. If that's true, and DC Comics decides not to reshoot the movie, aren't they aiding and abetting? Aren't they saying, you're such rubes, all of you ticket buyers, that you're not going to care if we're propping up a felon? I don't know how that drama is going to play out. I really don't know why it's a drama at all. I don't understand why the producers and the money men at Paramount or Warner Brothers, whoever owns the Flash movie, I don't know why they didn't decide immediately, the minute the first story broke about Ezra Miller choke slamming a fan down to the ground. The minute that happened, the money men and the producers that are making the Flash movie should have fired Ezra Miller and started reshoots on the movie immediately. That should have happened immediately. That was 3 years ago. They wouldn't be having a problem now. They'd be on their second Flash movie now. That once upon a time, it used to be that if a totally interchangeable actor, Ezra Miller, I think, is a very talented actor. But in the movies, you see the Flash's face most of the time. Most of the stuff in the movie is the character in costume. That can be anybody. And scenes can be reshot. We learned that, right, from when Kevin Spacey was taken out of a movie in the last minute. Just fly a case of really good bourbon to Christopher Plummer, get him on the return plane, he'll do all the shoots in one day. We know that's possible. It would have been possible 3 years ago. I don't know why Warner Brothers has let the name of the Flash be so endangered like this. Fans of the character who don't like the antics of the actor are not going to support the movie unless you recast it. It's not tenable anyway. You're not obviously going to have this actor at your disposal for very long, no matter what happens, whether a conviction happens or whether more crimes happen. It's an obvious losing bet. That should have been an easy decision right out of the gate. There's video of you grabbing a fan by the throat and slamming her to the ground. You're fired. but no. so that's your comic for today. Your world's finest comic is The World's Fastest Loser. This is a one-note character. The Flash runs really fast. Now, I myself think that you could have made the character very interesting, and for a brief while, Mark Waid actually did that. Mark Waid and one other guy, who Michael would know his name, one other writer was it Mark Waid who wrote the famous Flash #1 that has him out racing a Navy jet on the cover? I have that first issue somewhere, but I don't remember who wrote it. But if you weren't involved in this ridiculous competition with Superman, who competes with Superman? If you weren't in that ridiculous competition to make Flash the fastest being in the world, in the multiverse, if you were just having to be a super fast, fun crime fighter, one of whose supervillains can spray the ground with ice, so I'm slipping. Yeah, great rogues gallery. Really got the psychological compulsion of a Two-Face or a Joker. Anyway, if you had done that, if you had stuck with the solution that was right there to hand at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earth, so you have a new Flash, he's less experienced, he's a kid, he's just out of his teens, and he can only run at maximum the speed of sound. There you go. There you go. That is a Flash I could have got behind. At least a little. Not only because the power set is more interesting. A Flash that is connected to some god called the Speed Force, you can use that as a MacGuffin to get out of anything, and writers do. But a Flash who isn't connected to any type of Speed Force, where there isn't any Speed Force, where he just runs really fast, that's interesting as a power set, and also by that point, Wally West has a long history as a character, including traumatically losing his friend and mentor, Barry Allen. So there you have a person. There you have a person whose adventures I would want to read anyway, even if he doesn't run at super speed. DC took that avenue for very little time, and then they started this Speed Force nonsense where you've got the character becoming a god, and all sorts of dude bro weight being placed on his rogues gallery, and whole mini fan documentaries about the rogues. Yeah, they're the greatest, man, and they mean something too. so your comic book Wednesday for today is an instance in which, because Michael K Vaughan disagrees with me, Michael K Vaughan is wrong. We must pray for him. That we must pray that the next comic book Wednesday is one in which we agree. Although I know you bloodthirsty little marmosets aren't praying for that. You're praying that we keep disagreeing because you like that better. There's something to be said for it, I admit. Although I'd be willing to bet that Michael K Vaughan and I probably agree on more comic books than we disagree. And I'm not going to tempt the gods because he hasn't unloaded any of his A-bombs yet. He could. There are plenty of things that he has in big 100-pound omnibus volumes that he knows I hate a lot more than The Flash. He hasn't done that yet. Maybe in the spirit of Christmas charity, he will forbear. But anyway, that's our character for today. It's the Flash individual issues being bought in 1970 by some loser. Should have known better, but was such a fan of Gil Kane that he couldn't help himself. Anyway, and that's our character for today. I know all of you are going to be Flash fans, so it's not going to matter anything I do. But one thing I'm going to try and remember to do for this video, if I don't, look it up on your own. One thing I'm going to try and do is leave a link to a clip, if I can find it, from the animated Justice League TV series that was fantastic. Had two different incarnations. They were both great. And there's a moment in a later episode of, I think it's Justice League Unlimited, where Wally West, the Flash, discovers his ability to tap into the Speed Force. And I have to admit, although I don't think the idea makes any sense at all, I don't like it. I wish it was just retconned out of the character. I have to admit, the scene is really good. So, if I can remember, I'll leave a link to that below. But if I post this and forget to do it, just go to YouTube and type in Justice League Flash Speed Force, and it'll probably be the first clip that comes up, if there is a clip for it, where he defeats Lex Luthor because he's so fast. Oh my god. Anyway, we'll hope for better next week. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.